finally doing this.
We are finally doing this. We've been talking about this for a long time. So welcome to Samara Builds.
Thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. You are one of my best friends, but we've only been friends in the grand scheme of things for a short amount of time, although it's felt like a long time in a great way.
Yeah, I agree.
We've been friends for like 4 years.
4 years this Valentine's Day. We did the ski lesson. It was part of your how do I get habits to have a better winter.
Yeah.
So that sad isn't quite as sad.
Yeah.
I think it worked. If you gained some skiing skills.
I know.
And
Shredded.
then I just never left you alone after that.
Well, you and I have a special bond as friends that's like transcendent of skiing.
It is. It evolved wonderfully.
So I asked to interview you because when I think of people who have built a better life or who are like working on building a better life, you're top of mind.
Which is still mind-blowing to me. I was surprised that you even asked me in the first place.
But
I really appreciate it.
Think of who we were when we first met skiing 4 years ago. We were totally different people.
Oh, I wouldn't recognize myself.
Yeah.
In almost every way.
Yeah. And now we're still great friends, but still just like, I would say evolved versions of ourselves.
Completely. I built a better Josh.
Yeah.
But I also realized that like that's a never-ending project. Just like this. It's just you have to choose to like do the things to make it better.
Yeah.
And surprise, it starts to get better.
Surprise. So yeah, I want to talk about that process for you, and because like I said, we've been friends for like 4 years. You've changed a lot in that time. And so for a lot of people, they would think that like the focus would be only those 4 years, right? But based on our conversations, like you have to go much further back than that to really improve your life, right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's part of the healing the inner child. It's part of, it's never just what's happening now. Our life is full encompassing. It's what we do now affects what we're going to do later, and you have to go back to fix those things too. So it's been a process for everything from top to bottom, whether it's therapy and learning about why I react to the way the things I do now compared to what happened to me before and how it affects me. Like being aware of all of it just helps you to build that better person, build that better life.
I couldn't agree more. So, if it's okay with you, I think it would be beneficial for the people watching to learn more about you. Like, tell me about your childhood. Where do you come from?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of have to start at the beginning, like we're saying, because there's so much involved with it. But I definitely have lived a unique life. I was born here in Ogden. My parents were never a couple. They were never together. And so I've always had a split family. It's always been a big family. My mom remarried after her first husband, so I already had siblings there, but life was always confusing from the beginning. And so I had a unique way of seeing life from the get-go. From there, there's the trials and tribulations that come with that. It's still a broken home. So I have 2 Christmases. I have the desire to be at mom's house when I'm at dad's house, and the desire to see friends at dad's house that I can't see when I'm at mom's house. Those things tie in. I have a unique set of siblings as well. I have stepbrothers that are much older and they were already adults by the time we even met, and I was just a little kid. My stepmom had already raised them. She, had already done that. On my mom's side, I have all half siblings that are half blood, half Japanese, 3 of them, my little brother, and I'm close with everybody, but to different degrees and in different ways. And they're all married, and I have different relationships with their spouses as well. And it It really provides a lot of variety that I really don't think a lot of people get. But like I said, that comes with the happy and the sad as well. Part of my growing up was moving a lot. I moved, I want to say like 30 times before I was 25.
Wow.
And I didn't have a member in my family that was military or anything like that. It was just trying to find the next best spot. A lot of moving around to get out of a worse situation to get into a better one, to find a better house, or to find something that's smaller because we need to cut down for a little while. I had different lives throughout my whole life. I had my dad's side where it was a very different life than I lived at my mom's side. And it wasn't by choice, it was by necessity. And again, all these things just make life complicated.
Yeah. I just want to pause here for a second. You're just going through these things quickly, but these are like big deals, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're one of my best friends, if somebody asked me how many siblings you have, I'd be like, I don't know. Because it is kind of a confusing family tree.
Yeah.
That's an interesting start, to have a confusing, really branched out family tree. And then to move so many times, to go through, like, they talk about like some of the most stressful things in life are marriage, divorce, death, and moving. Mm-hmm. To move that many times as a kid, like did you ever just crave stability? Like,
that's part of what was so
of
unique about it, though, is at my dad's house, it was stable. He lived in the same house from when I was 6 until I was 20. And I didn't always live with him. I was there more with visitation and sometimes lived with him. But that was a solid base. And I kind of enjoyed moving around with my mom. I got to meet more people. I got to start over when I messed up at school. I got to, go through a new experience in a new place. And I learned to crave that. Like even later in life, in my 20s, I moved to 6 different states all over the US and lived there for varying different amount of time. And, it's weird how you get kind of used to those things. I like to say I'm a pro mover now. I'm one of those people that, like, when a friend says, the last thing I want to do is help a friend move, I'm like, call me. We're going to make this easy. It's going to be fun. Like, you're going to be surprised how not terrible it is because I've done it so many times. I call it kind of the hermit section of my life where, you move around with the intent of seeing new people, experiencing new things, just getting out of that bubble from where you live. Even though I moved a lot, it was all within close areas. So I was still within driving distance of friends, so I still would see them as I kept going on throughout the years. And
that's cool.
Connections are made, and you can either, keep them or not. It's not necessarily a choice, but sometimes it just happens.
Yeah.
And so I've always valued that, and I think it gave me a unique perspective on appreciating that. And part of the reason why, as I grew older, I wanted to go to these new places.
Okay. I appreciate that, like, it brought out a lot of good. And I think the point you made of, like, where it wasn't these across country moves does make a difference.
Now, I don't want to say that you were wrong, though. It doesn't mean it was easy. I learned to like it. There were definitely times where I looked out the back window at my friends standing on the sidewalk waving goodbye, knowing that I might not ever see them again. And those memories still live with me as well, but I think those are also lessons. And I learned that later in life too, that going through that helped me appreciate other friendships even more, or, there's something special to that as well.
Yeah.
So I've learned to appreciate it, but that doesn't mean it was easy.
Yeah, for sure. With such, like I said, so many branches on your family tree, how did that play into your home life?
Oh, there was definitely many ups and downs. I mean, my mom's second marriage, I would not call a healthy marriage. Her second husband, my little brother's dad, was an addict from an injury that pain pills led to addiction. It was abusive, especially mentally, somewhat physically as well. And just seeing those things it's really tough, especially because, I didn't have my mom has a husband to start out,
Yeah.
so he was never really dad. And all of that just was tough to deal with. But again, it helped me love her more and stronger and helped me to be more of the, I guess, feminist, you could say, that I am today. It helped me appreciate what not to do. Like, it's a bad example, but I learned from it, definitely, of that's not how things work. On top of that, his extended family was also rough. His nephew, my cousin, sexually abused me when I was really young, too young to know what was going on, too young to really handle it. Luckily, again, I've gone through hours and hours and days and weeks of therapy to help work through those things, but it's not easy to go through either. And it still affects everybody. As, like I say, the inner child, it comes out even now, even with things like that. Even though I've done the work, you still have to deal with those things.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's when you don't want to deal with it, but you have to learn from stuff like that. Part of what's hard about that is that because of the divorce, because of how things played out back then, my aunt, his sister, passed away, and we never saw that cousin or his dad again. There's never been any justice or retribution, or there's no story beyond that. It ended at getting therapy for it, getting help for it on my end. So sometimes it feels like the closure isn't quite there, but I know it's not something that I can control. So I remember that the universe is on my side, and I just hope that justice was done someplace else, I guess you could say. But again, that's part of having, I think, just family in general. I don't think that I'm the only person that's been through that. I don't think that anybody could deserve that in any way, shape, or form. But it's a real thing that happens, whether it's a mixed family or not.
I mean, you're right in that it happens, but I don't want you to gloss over it by saying it happens.
You're right. You're right.
It shouldn't, and that's traumatic, and that's horrible.
It is. It is. And while I say I've worked through it, it isn't an ending thing. Like it's the type of thing that's so traumatic and jarring that you have to always be aware of it and always work on it, because it's going to affect you in ways that you wouldn't ever really imagine at all. It's part of your subconscious way more than it is a part of your conscious. And so that's why it takes more than just, I don't think about it. It takes actually diving into it. And I was really, really blessed to have an amazing therapist when I was in high school that helped me work through a lot, so many things. I will forever be grateful. And to this day, I mean, even yesterday, I thought about things that I learned from him in preparation for this, just knowing how important therapy is and how much it can help. It was life-changing.
If you don't mind me asking, how old were you when that happened?
It's hard to truly know that age for me because there's so much that I tried to forget over the years. Yeah. But I know I was right around 6 or 7 years old, maybe. I want to say between 5 and 8, right around there.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Me too. It happens way too often.
Yeah.
I will never understand what brings somebody to do that type of thing. I don't think it's something that's forgivable technically, but I'm healing. I will always continue to heal from it, and I think it's another one of those things that gives me a unique perspective where I can kind of see that in other people sometimes, and have been able to help others avoid situations that were negative based off of a bad vibe from a person. When I was 13, 14, there was this guy that would go to the pool that me and my buddies would always go to every day, and he would buy us pizza, buy tickets to the movies, and eventually, like, his plan was, of course, to do something to that effect. It's funny to say this, but I was outside of his age range by the time it would have happened. And so the sheriffs that caught him, they interviewed me and they went through that process, and we were able to help get him locked up. But they also understood that I kind of slipped away from that one. And that was another huge life lesson, because I even remember my parents saying, like, you can't spend time with this person. This is not a person that you can trust. It doesn't matter how smart you think you are. It's not a good situation. And it took me long enough to realize it, but I was lucky enough to not be one of his actual victims, I guess you could say. But going through that twice in its own way in your life, again, that's another thing that when I was in high school with that therapist in particular, I had to really work through. And it's another person that, like, sure, they're in prison. There was actually justice this time. There was something that happened, even though nothing in specific happened to me. That was an evil person that was hurting people and is probably in prison still to this day. But again, going through those things is, it's not easy. It's not easy. And I know a lot of people have gone a more unhealthy direction with it, where coping mechanisms like alcohol, drugs start to come into play. A lot of people who were offended at some point become offenders, sadly. And it's always been a life goal of mine to make sure that I can help anybody to avoid that in any way possible.
Yeah. When you saw that therapist in high school, was it because of the things that had happened to you, or what had you start going to therapy?
So it was related. Essentially, because of that first cousin incident, I've really been in therapy since I was a small child.
Did you tell your parents at the time?
I did.
Okay.
Or they
Deduced?
They noticed.
Yeah.
There were things that I would do that made them think that something had happened.
They were paying attention.
Exactly. There were signs. And even if it's something small, it's still worth thinking and talking to someone about it that knows more.
Yeah.
And so luckily, they had the wherewithal. My amazing parents, even though they weren't together, were great parents. And we went to therapy. We started off strong. I still somewhat remember that first therapist. I was still really young and going through those traumatic times, so it's hard to remember.
Yeah.
But I still remember, like, even directly in her office, her just, like, literally saying, like, here's a thing that's happening that shows. And so that's when they, like, really tried to figure it out, help talk to me. And luckily, I was able to speak out and say something.
That's so good.
Because I know there's so many people that haven't felt that they could speak out. I think I was young enough that I didn't really know, so I spoke out. Again, there wasn't anything they could do because they couldn't find that person, but they were at least aware of what happened. And then, like I said, I started that therapy young, went through that, but of course, when you're going through this type of life, as you can probably predict, I wasn't the best student. I wasn't the best behaviorally. Always did well on my tests, hated homework, didn't want to be in class unless I was being challenged, loved recess, which a lot of those are typical, but in this situation, a lot of them are trauma-based as well.
Yeah.
And so the behavioral issues in school extended to high school. My freshman year, I wasn't partying, I wasn't drinking, I wasn't getting in trouble those ways. I wasn't succeeding at the things that they knew I was capable of. I wasn't going to class, wasn't doing my homework. And these things were making me fail because they were the parts of it that I needed to do. So even though I could answer the questions and I could do the test, I needed to do the other parts as well. And so they actually pulled me out of traditional high school for, I want to say, a good 6-month period. And I went to the Behavioral Health Institute in Ogden. Essentially every morning I would go there like it was school. We would do packets for actual class, and then we would do group therapy, individual therapy, and then I would go home at night. That was a pretty traumatic time as well, because a lot of the people I was there with were there for completely different reasons. A lot of the people there were there for sexual abuse, but it was, again, causing issues in these other situations like school. And so it's definitely heavily favored on the therapy side of things, so that you are really concentrating on that as well as getting the schooling as well. And so there were times that I didn't feel that I was supposed to be there. But the further I got into the therapy side and the further I really dug into it, I realized, just because my experience is different from theirs, that doesn't mean that I don't need the situation as much. Yeah. And once I gave in and really realized that I needed it, and that I found this therapist, and we really started to work together. And there were so many times where it almost felt like he tricked me. But in the best way, because he was teaching me something, and I don't need to get into the nitty-gritty details of it, because every therapist is different, but we found a spot that really worked for us, and he helped immensely. I was able to really dive into these things that I hadn't thought about, because these traumatic things, you
don't want to think about them.
That's the last thing you want to do, because it was a bad experience. So we dove in. He asked the hard questions, and because I gave into it and realized that it was helping and I needed to go through it, even if it sucked, I went through it, and it helped.
I'm really proud of you.
Well, and that's just to high school.
Okay, so
we're kind of up to sophomore year.
Yeah, you'd been through a lot in your childhood. Sounded like you started on some good mental health support through high school. I kind of want to jump ahead.
Yeah.
To when we met.
That's smart.
Let's jump ahead to when we met, because like we've talked about, when we met, we were both kind of in a time in our life where we were expanding, but also really trying to do a lot of self-care and self-growth. And so I want to hear about your experience through that in that time frame.
Yeah. This was just before COVID.
Yeah.
I was very depressed at the time. I didn't think I was depressed as I was. I was less depressed than I used to be, because I had started improving my life, the baby steps at that time. But around that time is when things started clicking. There were little fireworks that would go off, I guess you could say, of epiphanies of if you do this, there's a positive reward to it. It improves your life. Little things that I always knew I was capable of, but just wasn't putting in the effort yet.
Yeah.
And I do give myself the credit that I don't think I was capable of the effort until it clicked. And so I don't live in the fact that I wish I would have started this when I was younger. I wish I would have done it sooner. Because while that may be true, I don't have a chance to make that choice.
Yeah.
I only can do what I can do now.
Yeah.
And so at that time, I had gone, to expand on the depression side of it, it had led me to be super, super lazy, to be extremely complacent. I didn't care about my health. I didn't care about my well-being. I didn't take care of myself in the slightest. I would bathe, be presentable, but I was drinking a lot. I was smoking a lot. I didn't care about me. Partially because I didn't really think that I was going to live past 35. I hadn't really been suicidal, technically, in the fact that I had never tried. I hadn't really thought about writing a letter. I hadn't taken these steps that I know are the more common thoughts that people have.
Yeah.
But I was that depressed.
Yeah. And I just want to say, I'm so glad you bring up that point, because I feel like so many more people are in that mindset versus, oh, I need to write a letter and commit the act right now, versus like, oh, I'm just going to treat my body really bad for the next 10 years and that'll do it. Like, I feel like that's a lot of people in that headspace.
It's a majority,
yeah.
honestly. Part of the reason we know suicide is a bad thing is because it's more prevalent, it's more surprising, it's more jolting.
Yeah.
What I went through was more common.
Yeah.
I didn't have a bunch of people in my life saying, you know, you gotta change the way you're eating, you gotta exercise more, you gotta go back to therapy. I didn't have that. And while I had people that cared about me, that thought process didn't happen because I masked my depression well, and I still was having fun. I still was friendly, Josh.
Yeah. Very social.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I was life of the party sometimes. I was still having fun, but that's not what depression is.
Yeah.
People think when I tell them I'm depressed, I want to say 9 times out of 10, they say, oh, why are you sad? And it's like, I'm not sad at all, actually. I'm depressed. It's very different.
Yeah.
And this level of my life, the depression, was different as well, because like I'd gone to therapy, you know, I justified it in my head so many times. I've already gone through that.
You had all the answers.
Yeah, I know how to
done
do
the work.
this.
Yeah.
I've even had friends at that time, like they would always come to me for advice. They'd always ask me what they should do in that situation.
And
I gave great advice.
Yeah.
Like always, but I wasn't taking my own advice.
Yeah.
Because again, I didn't care about me. I had super low self-esteem. You know, while I dated here and there, it wasn't anything truly meaningful. It wasn't sticking. It wasn't anything great. And while I had fun, I had good things in my life, I didn't have the great things. And one of the things that I've always had an incredible passion for, I started when I was young. I taught you how to ski. Snowboarding has always been extremely special to me. I taught for 6 years, from when I was 14 until I was 20. The only reason I stopped teaching professionally was because I got sponsorship and I started to compete and do some traveling, and I got to truly follow a passion. I made the choice, especially once I got closer to that 20-year-old age. I was coming out of high school, and it was kind of a, do I want to go to college? Do I want to party and snowboard? And I chose that route, the latter. And I enjoyed myself thoroughly, but during those times I, again, wasn't healthy, etc. And so it was well justified by doing fun things. I'm experiencing life. Still wasn't super healthy. And as I got more depressed and didn't do the more positive things in my life and partied more, I snowboarded less. And as everybody knows, as you get older, your body doesn't stay in top shape like it does when you're super young.
Yeah,
and
especially when you're not doing the same workouts.
Exactly. Yeah. And even if I wasn't going to the gym, I was naturally talented. Because I enjoyed it so much, you know, I would be there from open to close so many times. I mean, for 2 years in a row, I literally rode on my snowboard on snow for more than 250 days in the year.
Wow.
That's how it was me. Like, people knew me as wearing a beanie, snowboarding, like it was part of me. And like I said, as I continued to get more into partying, more depressed, I snowboarded less and less. Mm-hmm. That side of things didn't pan out, which happens to most athletes in any sport.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you go to college, you play for a college team, none of those guys make it to the next level. Even
if you're the star at your college, doesn't mean you're going to be a professional.
Exactly. Yeah. There's too many people.
Yeah.
And I accepted that pretty quickly. I still just enjoyed myself and had fun. But as the years went on, like I said, I did it less and less. I got fatter. And I know fat's a terrible way to say that, but I did. I got slovenly, I got unhealthy.
You didn't replace that activity and that passion with anything else.
Exactly. There was nothing else. I played some golf every once in a while and had some fun with friends, but I was not active.
Yeah.
There was far too many days spent rotting in bed, as they'd say.
Yeah.
And that was the depression. And I wasn't doing anything about it. And so it just got worse. And eventually I got up to the point on the scale that I wouldn't look at it anymore. I stopped looking at it because I didn't like what it said. But I also wasn't willing to make the change and do differently at that point.
Yeah.
So back to the snowboarding side of things, my family and I went on a snowboarding trip. Big deal. We hadn't done it in a long time, and I couldn't ride with them the way that I had before. Not just like I couldn't do the tricks that I could do. My first lap down the mountain, I had to stop and rest, and my feet hurt and my legs hurt, and all these things that came to me so naturally before and brought me so much pride hurt in so many ways. It hurt because I immediately knew that I had done it to me by my decisions. It hurt because I knew that it also was the depression, even though I didn't want to admit it. And these thoughts all rushed in, and it sucked. It sucked really bad. And I told myself in that moment that I would make the change. And I think that was the initial spark, that when you can't do something you're absolutely passionate about, you either accept it or you make the change. And that's when I started to make the change. From that point, I knew the first step was getting healthier. I didn't know how to do it yet. And as much as I wish I would have reached out for more help, I didn't have the financial means to get a health coach, to get a trainer and things like that. So I kind of did it my way. I did it through research. So I still looked at what other people's experiences were, looked at coaches that were providing free information, and kind of just tried it out.
Yeah. You're a Scorpio. You did your research.
Yes. But I gave myself the grace to let it happen without doing it unhealthily. So I stopped smoking. I chose to drink less. I first started with the diet side of things, where it was much more like, well, I already know the things I'm doing wrong. I know that when I go to a fast food place, I'm not supposed to order the biggest burger in a meal and then order things on the side and the biggest fully sugar soda and just indulge.
Right.
While those things felt good in that moment, it was never a lasting feeling.
Yeah.
And I had to actually pay attention to that.
Yeah.
So I started there. I either ate less fast food.
I just want to pause and say, that's a wonderful start. Where I feel like so many people, when they feel overwhelmed with their health and their weight and their lifestyle, they think they have to make all these changes all of a sudden have a perfect diet, lose tons of weight immediately. That's a great start. Just looking at, what am I eating out that I can do differently? That's cool.
I thank you. I mean, I agree, because so many people try to jump way too fast into it. They try to go, I immediately need to go to the gym all the time. Again, could I have put even more effort in? Sure. But I'm happy with my results and the way that I've done it, because I've given myself the breaks. I've given myself those times where you're not going to be 100% every day. Yeah. Sometimes it's okay to give in to that McDonald's craving or something. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with doing that in moderation.
Yeah.
I just had to help myself learn moderation. And being a very habitual creature myself, I had to learn new habits. And that takes time and effort.
Totally.
It's really easy to stop trying to make a new habit.
Yeah. I love that sentence. I had to learn moderation. Because that is something that you can learn, and you have learned it.
Yeah, I did it with every aspect of my life that I knew I needed to, that I wasn't.
Yeah.
Not necessarily all at once, but I started with things, and as I saw success with each little thing, it gave me so much more motivation to keep doing the other things.
Right.
You know, something as simple as like, I know that smoking cigarettes and vaping is bad. I've always known. I didn't do it because I wanted it to be bad. I did it because I liked it anyway, even though I knew it was bad. So it's that realization and moment that I say, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
That juice isn't worth that squeeze.
Yep.
It's not healthy for me.
Yeah.
So I need to find something else.
Yeah.
So after changing the diet, in the way that I knew how at that time, I started aiming for healthier things. Now at this time, I still also had some terrible food allergies.
Yeah.
I was not like need to carry an EpiPen allergic, but definitely can't eat certain things so I don't have to carry an EpiPen.
Mm-hmm.
That was fruits, veggies, basically those fresh things that are the best for you.
Yeah.
I had a negative reaction to. Luckily, I was able to overcome that, not through science, but through some willpower. I ate small amounts that I knew I was comfortable with, but I forced those things into my diet, and now I don't have any issues with it at all. I can eat everything. There's a couple of things that I may look at it and have a small bite of just to test, like sweet pea pods specifically. They're delicious, but they don't like me. But somehow I was able to work through that and also incorporate those into my diet. So now I've already realized that I need to stop putting less bad things in. I'm conscious of that and attempting that, getting more and more successful all the time. I'm incorporating more healthy foods. I'm kind of on a roll. Yeah. I really dive into that harder, and I lose about 65 pounds.
That's awesome.
Thank
That's
you.
so cool.
At that time, before I started, was when I finally decided to weigh myself. And I came in at 305 pounds.
Wow.
Which I would have never guessed that I was over 300.
How did that feel?
To see the number?
Yeah.
It was a unique kind of anger. Because it's anger and disappointment mixed, where I was mad at myself for even letting it get to that point, because I like to think I hold myself to a higher standard. But at the same time came rushing in the grace that I needed to give myself of, you were not you. You were depressed. You were unhealthy. You were not making decisions based off of your best interest. You were making decisions based off of your interest at that time. And that's part of the mindset that I had to change. Was I missed snowboarding.
Yeah.
And so I needed to get to the point where I could enjoy that. But I didn't think about that very much. I thought about it then, and then as the time went on, that became less important. It was still part of the goal. I still wanted to do it, but there were so many other things that just became so evident as I started really looking into those things.
Yeah.
And I was successful that first year. I call it a success. Losing 65 pounds is a big deal.
That is.
And then the next winter came. And that's when I really realized that it wasn't just regular old depression. I also had seasonal depression as well. And
funneled, sad on top of everything.
To have both is quite the combination. As you know, part of what we can, relate over after all these years. And it was a rough winter. I gained back almost every single pound. And it was purely because a lot of those things that I was doing, that I had faith in, I chose not to.
Yeah.
And I was mad at myself again. I saw the scale again. I didn't get back up over 300 again. And even with seeing 305, again, it was one of those situations where like, that's what I saw on the scale. That's after I had already started a little bit.
Yeah.
So when people ask, I will often say that I was around 315 when I first started.
Yeah.
Who knows if that's really even it. But when you're in that situation, that's the last thing you want to do is admit what the evidence is. Yeah. Numbers don't lie, as they say.
Yeah.
But that second winter, excuse me, that first winter, gaining that back was motivating. I knew what I was capable of already. Now I just needed to take those next steps. It's not just buying something different at the store. It's not just eating less at the fast food place. It's avoiding the fast food place and making it a last option. It's cooking fresh foods for myself. It's meal prep. It's understanding what calories in and calories out is.
Yeah.
So while I had setbacks that first winter, I was motivated. I was more aware and I was ready to make these changes. So I did those next steps that I thought I could handle. Yeah. That was one of the biggest things, is like we talked about, not overdoing it. I wanted it to be not just a diet. I didn't want to just lose weight.
Yeah.
I wanted a lifestyle change so that I could improve my life. It wasn't just get more fit. It was getting more fit will help my depression. I started to put together all these things that to other people are super obvious, but when you're in those doldrums, when you're in that depressive state, it's almost impossible to even realize.
Yes.
I had motivations like you wanting to learn how to ski. I had a new friend that wanted to ask like me how to ski. So that's another motivation to, better myself so that I could do that and I could help you have the best time, because it's sharing something that I loved so much. So it was another motivation for me. So that next summer, like I said, I did meal prepping. I started counting calories. I started working out. And even on the working out side, because I had a history with being an athlete and things like that, I could have just gone right to the gym and I could have overdid it and hurt myself or made these things happen that would have set me back. But instead I took it slow. I started walking a lot. I started specifically looking for those times and places that I could be more active in general. I wanted to do more hikes. I wanted to, again, snowboard more or ski more. I wanted to do these things that I knew you had to be in a little bit better shape to do. Yeah. But I was much more accepting of how I'm able to perform that. I knew that I was getting older. I knew that I was in less shape. So I gave myself, again, grace. And I understood, just enjoy yourself. It brings you joy, and keep working. And that next summer, I lost 85 pounds. And I got down to 220 pounds. This was 2023.
Okay.
I felt awesome.
Yeah.
I was... One of the things I was most proud of was that I knew I could strap on my shoes and just run 5 miles. I hadn't been able to do that since high school.
Yeah.
Just to know in my brain that I could do that was wonderful.
Yeah.
I was starting to really get the hang of my meal prepping and the effort I was putting in. I was creating these new habits. And then winter came again. And I didn't really prep myself for it. I knew that it was going to happen, but I still wasn't fully ready. I was better than this winter before. I was healthier. I was less depressed, but I still wasn't where I needed to be. There were even parts of my life outside of my health that I hadn't taken that next step to improve yet. While I was working, I was living for free with a family member because my depressive state had put me back enough that I needed that help. I wasn't in a place financially that I could be in my own space, that I didn't have the good friends to have roommates at that time, and luckily I have the family that was able to help support and really help me out. I will be forever grateful and indebted to my family, my mom, my sister. They're true heroes into like helping Josh be here today, more than they know.
I love that.
I love you. Thank you. And in that time, I knew that all these things I was doing were positive. I was improving my life. I was getting better. It was noticeable from other people. When I'd see someone I hadn't seen in a while, Josh, you look great.
Yeah.
And those times it was really nice. So if you see somebody going through that, please always say something, always. But to like see it myself, to hear it from other people, I knew I was headed in the right direction, even if I had setbacks. And so while I still had another winter of seasonal depression, I was aware. And as it happened, I tried to do my counteractions. I tried to work out a little bit more, which was tough. I mean, I don't know if it happens to you, but my ancestors are from Europe. And I don't know if you've ever heard the tale, but it's the whole, during winter, I want to be warm and cozy and eat a lot and not be active. And so I do think that there are parts of that happen naturally. And I do think that there are times that we can also work against that as well and work towards still being healthy while allowing that.
Yeah.
And that was the winter that I first really started to try that. I was more successful. I only gained back 40 pounds rather than all 60 instead of 65.
Yeah.
But I was still proud again.
Yeah.
At this point in time, I also went back to therapy. It was hard to admit that I still needed therapy. It's still hard today because, like I said, I started so young. Like, how am I not a pro at it?
You should have it figured out.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
It was the realization of it. There isn't an end. You don't win this game.
Yeah.
The winning is that you keep going and you just keep going. And that helped me a lot. It was another point in time where I thought I was thinking more clearly than I was, and therapy helped break it down. We have our own veils where we see our life one way and it's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
We have our own narratives.
We're really good at lying to ourselves.
Yeah.
And even better sometimes at not admitting it. But that's what therapy is, though, honestly. That's why it's a third-party person. That's why going to your friend and calling them your therapist is not the same.
No.
While you may be getting something from it, you're not getting what you need from it.
No.
Not truthfully. It's like that fast food. Damn, it tastes good. It's easy. And it sucks soon after. And that's kind of how that other side of things goes. And going to the real therapist, the professional, that third-party person, helps you see things from that point of view.
Yeah.
And that is a whole unique point of view that you aren't going to get anywhere else.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. That's why I will always advocate, not just to go to therapy, but that I think every single human should go to therapy at least once a month, once every 2 months, something to that effect.
Yeah.
Whether you're healthy or not, I don't care if you have depression. Guess what? You need therapy.
You heard it here first.
Everybody. All of you. It's so worth it. Because as perfect as we think our lives are, there's always room for improvement.
Yeah.
Always. Even if it's little. Even if it's just so that you aren't putting that burden on your friend.
Yeah.
Because while they're there for that, wouldn't you rather not have to?
Yeah.
And when you have that professional, sure, the friend's still there. They're going to be there. But you get to redefine that and you get to have a healthier friendship.
Yeah.
Because now some of the things that are better said with a therapist are said with the therapist.
Yeah. There are a couple of things I want to touch on here. Like, first of all, I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
So proud of you. You look great. And I don't mean just like physically thinner. Like, you just have a healthy glow, right? You can tell you're a lot more confident. You carry yourself in a way that just like, I'm so happy to be your friend and so confident to be out with you. We've talked a lot about in the past 4 years about like your diet and your exercise, and those are so important. And I'm so proud of you. I also just feel like probably in lockstep with your changes in diet and exercise, like just changing your lifestyle, it also has, in my opinion, helped you emotionally and mentally. Like, I see you being better at advocating for yourself. I see you being better at setting boundaries. Would you say that those things are tied together, or how does that work for you?
I don't just think that they are tied together. I think that they are a pair. They come together. You can't have one without the other, honestly. One of the things during that time period of therapy that we talked about is ego. And I learned my definition of ego.
Okay.
I feel that there, especially in cis hetero men, there's two types. There's the inflated ego and there's the deflated ego. Inflated ego is not healthy. It comes from bravado. It comes from that alpha side of things. It comes from dishonesty. It comes from bullying. All these things that, like I say, it inflates it. You're not being real.
Yeah. Is that toxic masculinity?
Very much so.
Okay.
Very much so. It completely ties into that, because the reason I say inflated versus deflated is that it's not dense. It doesn't have any weight to it. If you are the kind of person that is paying attention, you can see through it.
Yeah.
So, like I said, it's bravado. It's not real.
Yeah.
My goal was to deflate it and make it dense. That comes through confidence. That comes through respect. That comes through almost the opposite of so many things. What's the word I'm looking for? Patriarch comes from the patriarch. There's so many things that are indoctrinated into us that make us feel that an ego is not just important, but that it's worth lying about to make it seem like it's there. And I think it's very subconscious. It's kind of hard to describe still, but my goal was to get rid of any inflation of my ego, get rid of anything that made it fake and something I couldn't actually back up, and instead improve how I saw myself, improve my life, improve these things that ego, when it's deflated, has earned. And so when you say that you get to like see these things from me, I'm not trying to present. Yeah. It has happened because I put the work into those things.
You're probably less trying to present than you ever were.
Exactly. Yeah. There's no peacocking. Yeah. Instead, I'm just trying to be the best me. And so when you see me stand up straighter, it's because I'm choosing to. It's because it feels better, not because I need to do it for that person across the room. Yeah. And so deflating my ego and paying attention to it has been extremely important to me as well. I think it helps me be a better man. I think it helps me be a better partner, a better friend, and again, just a better me. And that's really the end goal, and is just keep trying to be the best me.
Yeah. I love that. That's really powerful. For me, my best me is like my 5-year-old self.
I mean, that's obvious.
How do you relate to your child self?
Oh, now we get to get into that part. That's been another recent thing for me. Making a lot of these improvements and changing my life has also gotten to the point where you start to think like, I mean, I want to have fun, but I don't want to have the fun that I used to have. I don't want to see how far into a 30 pack I can get and play drinking games. I want to do fun, productive things.
Yeah.
So how do I find that? What are the things that I liked? You know, maybe I'll bust out the rollerblades again. Maybe I'll play a game. Maybe I'll hang out with your nephews and play catch. I think as adults, we need to still have a touch of that young side with us, because it is a pure joy that I don't think you can get by just trying to be straight-laced all the time.
Yeah.
I think you need to let the hair down, get dirty, have some fun, and realize that it's not hurting anybody. Maybe a scratcher here or there, but it's not hurting anybody, which means that you get all the benefits without any of the pain.
Yeah.
But again, some you have to choose still. Yeah. And I'm proud of myself that I'm able to make that choice, but it's a conscious effort. Another thing that you have to choose to do.
Yeah.
And so I try to connect that way. I mean, I've been a fan of Real Salt Lake for a long time, but in the last 3 years, I'm a season ticket holder now, because while I enjoyed it, I wasn't involved. I can't miss a game now.
Now you're a supporter.
I'm not just a fan, I'm a supporter. I go to every game that I can because it brings that type of joy for me.
Is there a hand symbol for them?
There isn't. There's plenty of chants. I won't bore everyone with them, but they're great.
Just
the experience.
Go Real.
Yes, go Real. Go Real. And while I've been a sports fan my whole life, you know, I still had that kind of jockey side, you know, the athletic side, where I've always been a Lions fan and I've always been a Jazz fan. Again, I was a fan.
Yeah.
This I dove more into. I know who's on the team. I know who's been on the team. I know more than I ever have because I like to be involved with it. It brings me joy.
It's your hobby.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a healthy hobby. It's one that has camaraderie. It's one that I get to be silly and cheer and talk shit to other players that are, you know, on the field that can hear me. And there's just something to that I think is a childlike joy.
That's fine.
And I also choose to share that with people too because I love it so much.
Yeah.
I've brought you to games, both the men's and the women's team, and even those are two different experiences, but still fun.
Really fun.
And I like that I get to share that with the people that I care about.
Yeah.
You know, bringing family members, and you know, every Mother's Day I make sure to get my mom a ticket, and another best friend of mine, his mom, and all four of us go, and we make it cute. A day. You know, and we get to enjoy it. And it's one of those things where your parents don't necessarily want to go all the time, but they love to go and see you enjoy something.
Yeah.
And so as much as it's for me, it's for everyone too that I want to share that love with.
That's cool. Okay, so I'll reiterate, I'm very proud of you.
Thank
Not
you.
just how far you've come physically, but how far you've come mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It's been a journey, right?
All-encompassing.
Yeah.
All-encompassing.
Yeah.
Again, I said at the beginning that I wanted a lifestyle change. It's part of my lifestyle now.
Yeah.
So, for example's sake, a lot of games for Real Salt Lake are on a Wednesday. I work until 5 on Wednesdays, and that means that I would have to go essentially directly to the game. So I made the arrangement with my boss that I could leave at 3 on days that are game days and make up the time elsewhere so that I can go to the gym first.
That's cool.
And then go to the game.
That's cool.
Because he understands, and I made it a priority that even though I'm going to do these fun things, I'm going to do that too. Yeah. And it's not just going to the gym anymore. A few weeks ago, I lost my nephew to a tragic health issue that could never have been predicted. And while I've lost a lot of people in my life, that's the first person that I'm blood related to that wasn't a grandparent that has passed. And I didn't have a close relationship with this nephew in particular because he was given up for adoption, but he was still in our lives. My sister was still his birth mom, and he always knew that his whole life. He knew that he had sisters. He was a part of our lives, but we weren't close. He never lived in the state. That doesn't mean that it didn't hurt and suck. The difference is, this time around, I have much healthier coping mechanisms. I have a much healthier mindset. So in the past, when someone close to me has passed away, I have not felt. I have turned off my feelings. I don't want to feel those bad feelings. They're bad. They don't feel good.
Yeah, shut them down.
In any way that I could, whether that was drinking, smoking, just distracting myself in general. And while this isn't the first loss that I've dealt with in even this last 4 years, I felt it, and I dealt with it, and I'll keep dealing with it, and I'll keep grieving. But I handled it so much better than previous versions of myself would have. 10 years ago, had the same thing happened, who knows what justifications I would have used to let myself go further into the depression and to dig the hole deeper. Who knows?
Yeah.
So it's another time where I'm grateful to me that I put in the effort so that I could handle it that much better.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Speaking of just handling difficult things and being able to face things a little bit differently than you did in the past. Mm-hmm. How are you going into this winter, knowing the knowledge that you do have seasonal affective disorder and winters are hard for you? Like what do you think you're going to do differently this time?
I've already started, actually.
Yeah.
One of the things that I did, not this past summer, but the summer before, was one of those 75 hard programs. I didn't do the classic one, but I kind of made my own rules to it. Yeah. I made it mine. I did it. I was successful. I loved the results. I loved how I felt. And so this year, at the end of August, I decided to do a 3-month version of that. Kind of a 90 very hard. I'm right at the tail end of it now, but I decided to jump ahead of the seasonal depression and the things that I knew were coming. Because I know now, 2 years into it, that it's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's part of who I am. Yeah. It's part of my brain.
Yep.
Those neurons fire the way that they do. Yeah. I just got to do the best to be ready for it.
Yeah.
So my results are exactly what I was hoping for, while also giving myself the grace of dealing with grief and so many other things that still happened during those months. You know, I was going to a lot of Real Salt Lake games still because their season was happening. And I went to my favorite beer ladies and I got to tell them, I'm sorry, I'm going to still come and say hi, give you a hug, maybe buy a treat from you, but I'm not going to be buying any alcohol. And that's surprisingly hard to say to people. Yeah. Because people immediately think, oh, you're an alcoholic. Yeah. Oh, you're in a program. You're doing these things. And while that is a reason to be sober, sometimes it's hard to share that with people because you don't want them to think that. And so it comes to a conversation of, I'm not drinking right now, but it's because I just want to be healthier. Yeah. And so while I still attended the things that I wanted to, I still didn't fall into the vices. And so it was another time that I got to show myself that I have more control over my life than I think I do. And when I do these things that deep down I know are the right thing to do, guess what? You come out the other side feeling better.
Weird.
So many times I've fooled myself. Countless. I can't tell you how many times I fooled myself into thinking that the other route was the better route. Mm-hmm. And again, I was lying to myself. Yeah. But it's so nice to follow through with these things and do it the right way.
I want to rewind now. Mm-hmm. We talked about in high school, you were in therapy. We talked about, the changes you made to your life a few years ago. I want to talk about the in-between time. What happened? What did you go through that
kept me down?
Yeah.
I don't know a better way to put that. So yes,
no, that's
kept me down because I wasn't just depressed. There were traumatic and depressing things happening during that time as well. After high school, first I graduated a little bit early because I was at least able to get my shit together enough to do that. Myself and my family knew that high school wasn't for Josh. And so it came down to, how do we not do that?
Yeah.
So I needed to, I worked really hard. I did a lot of, packets and extra tutoring and things like that so that I could get out. And I immediately signed up and went to Weber State. I was in college classes before my fellow high school students were out of high school. And that was a bad idea. While college is different, I still wasn't ready for that. And so, again, I didn't go to class. I wasted that money that I was spending. I wasted that time. I went to 2 years of school, but I didn't go to school. And at about 20, so right at that time, was when I did get that sponsorship I talked about.
Yeah.
That's also when I started drinking. My 20th birthday, I had a White Russian. It was terrible, but it was fun.
Yeah.
And so 2 weeks later, I had another party. And I just kept going. And 3 months before my 21st birthday, I got an alcohol ticket. And I went to jail that night. And that was the first time. It sucked. When you're already depressed and you're in handcuffs in the back of a police car on the way to jail, you're going to be hard on yourself. There's not a part of that that's a good experience. I did still get lucky. My dad was a police officer in one of the towns that I grew up in for 26 years. And he knew a lot of these people, and they were very kind to me. The officers didn't want to take me to jail. They knew they needed to take me to jail because I was breaking the law. I had a ticket that I just hadn't paid. Probably a headlight, didn't stop at a stop sign, but I was not concerned with those things.
Right.
I wanted to party. I wanted to have fun. I didn't want to deal with real life things.
Yeah.
And so I had a warrant, and I got that alcohol ticket and went to jail. I went for the night. Again, like I said, they were kind. Luckily that night, my family felt like they needed to help me. And so they didn't let me stay the night that first night. They came and got me. I was in a very dark place. And that was one of those times where, while I didn't think, again, to write a suicide note or things like that, I started kind of pondering those things. And I really was dark with myself. I hated myself for even, again, making choices that I knew were going to lead to that type of thing. I knew better, but I still chose anyway because I was depressed and I didn't care about Josh. That was the first time. Again, I kept partying. I didn't learn my lesson. I got another ticket. I didn't pay for it again, and I got arrested again. And I went to jail again. It sucked again. But I was so down and depressed that I almost didn't feel as bad that time. And
you felt like it was more warranted?
I knew I deserved it every time. But I was less mad at myself for some reason. It's almost like I was trying to justify somehow. I knew I didn't actually ever convince myself, but I didn't hate myself quite as much. And while now in those situations I give myself grace, that wasn't what I was doing at that time. It's more that I was dissociating and pushing it away and not thinking about the actual weight of it and what it actually meant. I did it again later. I did it a total of 5 times.
Wow.
I was in handcuffs in a jail cell 5 times. And every single time, it was for something dumb like that. It was never because I was a criminal. That's part of how I justified it to myself. I was never I was never stealing.
Robbing a bank.
I was never, I was never hurting someone. It was never a DUI. It was none of those things. So I kept justifying that, like, I can still keep doing what I want to do because I'm not really hurting anybody. Mm-hmm. I was hurting someone. I was hurting me. Mm-hmm. Hurting me was okay.
Yeah.
There was nothing wrong with hurting me because I didn't like me. I just didn't let other people know that I didn't like me. The people I cared about knew. My mom, the angel that she is, she always knew. My dad he wouldn't tell me, but I knew that he was losing sleep, wondering if I was okay, wondering if I was actually going to take it too far, wondering if I was going to make the wrong decision and go to prison instead or something to that effect. Again, I give myself the grace of, it was always a dumb bench warrant. It was always a dumb thing like that. And I think in this situation, looking at it how I do now, that's still a healthy way of seeing it. But I also 100% realize it was all my personal choices. It all came down to a moment that I had the ability to choose one direction or the other, and I chose the other, even though I knew better.
Yeah. I can't help but think back to your childhood. Mm-hmm. You, like you said, you were a product of people who were never even a couple. Mm-hmm. You only had step siblings or half siblings. When you were talking about, like, it's okay to hurt yourself, do you think growing up you felt like an extra piece or like I don't know, I just feel like there's something there between it's okay for myself to be hurt and you're part of sort of a mismatched family where you don't have a full partner.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Like, while I had a connection with all these humans, I was the odd man out.
Yeah.
And now I have a bit of a sense of pride in that, but I don't think I really understood what that meant to have siblings, but to not be fully blood related to any of them.
Yeah.
My 3 older brothers are a lot older than me. My stepmom is 8 years older than my dad, and so she, like I mentioned before, already had kids and they were already adults.
She did that thing.
And so I didn't get to connect with them in a healthy way until I was older. I had fun, but I didn't feel like a member of the family. In fact, they're old enough that one of my nephews is older than my little brother. They're not related at all, just to show you again how confusing my family is. Yeah. But yeah, and so that's another like unique situation. On my mom's side, while I share blood half with each of my 4 siblings, my 3 older are half Japanese and have a different dad, and my little brother has a different dad. And I am closer with them naturally because I grew up in a house with them, I lived with them more. But again, I still didn't always feel a full piece of that puzzle. And you're exactly right. I definitely felt that there was a puzzle over here, and there was a puzzle over here, and they were complete. And I was the extra piece that didn't fit in either, but was welcome to hang around with them. I had some colors that matched. I had a shape that kind of matched, but I didn't fully fit in. And I don't think I was even consciously aware of that until I was in at least my 20s. Because while I dealt with those things, it was just still rough sometimes. I jokingly talk about how I'm an only child, a middle child, an oldest, and a youngest. Yeah. If you get all fun and technical with it, and I won't go into the details, but it's always something that I found fun. But when you put it that way, when you think about it from a different point of view, sure, it's a fun fact, but it's not easy to deal with. Yeah. And so it definitely, I'm sure, ties into many parts of my life where I felt, because I don't fit, maybe I don't belong as much in general.
Yeah.
Maybe those choices that I was making that affected me negatively I didn't necessarily think about others in those situations as well and how it affected them.
Yeah.
Partially because I didn't feel as connected. And I don't put any blame on any of my siblings or parents in the slightest. Right. I don't think that there was any intent ever from any of them to intentionally ostracize or anything to that effect. Did I still feel that way anyway sometimes? Definitely. I still have memories of crying in bed at my dad's house, wishing that I was at my mom's house. And that wasn't just because I didn't like living at my dad's house. I loved my dad. But I felt more joy there. And I think that had part to do with it. I felt like it belonged a little bit more over there.
Yeah. And I'm sure that the sexual abuse did not help those feelings.
No. I didn't, especially as a young kid, especially before therapy, I didn't make that connection at all. I didn't think about those things because, again, I tried to push it out. But those are the traumatic things that affect you no matter your conscious level of it or not. Even if it's not the level of what happened to me, even if it's little things, you don't truly realize how it affects you. There's a great book that I know you've read, that I recently read, The Body Keeps the Score. And it's not new. It's not crazy innovative, but it's real. Mm-hmm. There's a reason why it is still so respected and still so recommended and still so relatable, because it's real. Yeah. And going through that was a tough read. Yeah. Because every 2 pages, there's an aha moment of, wait, that's why I feel that way? Yeah. I highly recommend it to anybody, even those who don't feel like they've been through something traumatic, because trauma, I kind of relate it to like the Princess and the Pea. It's a tiny little thing for some people that can have ripples that you'll feel years and years later, but you don't know what it is. Yeah. You can't fix the problem because you don't know. And again, that's where therapy comes in.
Is it that book that talks about, there was this study with this group of people who were obese, and like 90% of them or something had sexual abuse in their childhood?
It is. And that wasn't even the intent of the study. Yeah. That was just part of what they found through with all the different things that this doctor was studying. The person that wrote the book didn't go into it with the intent of finding these answers and the things that he did. And that's part of what's so cool about it, because that's kind of how therapy was for me. You know, we knew that I had messed up things that happened in my life that I needed to deal with the trauma, but there wasn't like a game plan. There wasn't an outline. Yeah. It was, I gotta find something that sticks and work through it, maybe drop it for a little while and come back to it, cry about it for hours, go into therapy not wanting to talk about it, and then the next time wanting to dive head first and get as far as you can. Like, there's so many levels to it, and that definitely ties in. And seriously, people need to read the book. It's amazing. Yeah. It's a long read. And it's not parts of it you're not going to relate to parts. Like the whole beginning of the book is about veterans and PTSD through theirs, and I can't relate to that. Yeah. It was difficult for me to make it through that part, but I listened because I knew that there were going to still be kernels for me. Yeah. And I think that other people may have a similar experience, but it's so worth it.
It's a great book.
It's worth it. It's therapy itself. Do more, but it's great.
Back to, the middle point between you really helping yourself and getting help.
I still was self-destructive during that point. Obviously, we've talked about the legal issues that I had, and obviously I drank and partied and things like that too much. In those situations, you end up hanging out with people that are also in situations where they're trying to mask something or hide something or drink away problems. And so in those circles of people, you often run into those who are struggling as well. Yeah. And with that, sadly, also comes a lot of loss. When I was 21, my best friend, the person I've been able to be the closest with that I wasn't related to or anything like that. Like a real best friend.
Yeah.
We were in a rocky part of our friendship where I was with a significant other, a girlfriend at the time, that wanted me to be sober and clean. And so, sadly, that meant not hanging out with the friends that were doing those things to help me try to steer away from them. So I wasn't hanging out with him all the time. And I'll never forget the call that I got from another friend of mine telling me that he had passed. It hit me hard. It shocked my system. I blamed myself a lot at the time, even right as I heard the call, because I knew that he struggled with things. I knew that life wasn't easy for him as well. It was another situation where, like, he was friends with everybody. He improved everybody else's life, but he still struggled with his own things. And he passed away from an accidental suicide. His mom found him, and yeah, I obviously still feel that to this day. I'll never not. He was a great blessing in my life, and I will miss him forever. That wasn't the first time I lost a friend, but it was the first time that I had lost someone I loved. Someone I know it's, especially during that time, you know, the mid-2000s, saying I love you to your male friends was still
gay.
Silly and sadly gay, as they called it. But I was never that person. I was raised by a single mom, so saying I love you to my friends was a real thing, and I actually felt love for them, and I still to this day feel love for him. And I'm really sad that it ended the way it did, and that I wasn't able to help him understand how much I loved him, even when we weren't hanging out and talking a lot.
Yeah.
But boy, did that suck. Like I said, it wasn't the first time or the last time. Not too long after that, I had a friend pass away from a motorcycle accident. I had another friend pass away from not wearing her seatbelt and getting tossed out of the car. I had another friend not too long after that was killed in a drive-by shooting, where he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they killed him. That between, you know, losing normal family member deaths of old age or things like that as well, I became very desensitized to death and mourning and how that process is supposed to be. And during all those, I drowned those feelings. I didn't feel them. I didn't let myself go through them. And that's part of why I'm so proud of how I handle things now. I missed funerals that I know I should have gone to. How I feel now.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have made the decision to go instead of not.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to deal with how it felt to be there. I didn't want to feel all that sorrow, especially after going to that best friend's funeral. It sucked.
Yeah.
But I know you recently released the video about your Grandma Jane, and that was one of the funerals that I attended that felt so different to me. I had such a relation to funerals as people all being sad together. It's just a room of tears and sad. And that's not what this was. I don't really think that that's what any of the other funerals were either. That's just how I was interpreting them, how I felt. And I think that was a distorted view based off of where I was at the time. But this one in particular was a true celebration of an amazing life and an amazing person. Yeah. And while I'm not a religious person, I'm a spiritual person. And there was something there that day that helped me realize a lot of things. It's one of those introspective times where I learned again about me. And even though it wasn't long ago, I've already began to make changes of spending more time with my loved ones, because we only have so many Christmases left. We only have so many of these times left. And we need to cherish those times, because while it may seem like it's not happening anytime soon, it can happen anytime. And I don't want to sit at my house being sad and depressed and avoiding the funeral that's a celebration of someone's life, I want to be present for that.
Yeah.
I want to feel that and go through it. And it was a great lesson for me. It was beautiful.
That's great. She would have liked that.
I only got to meet her and talk with her a couple of times, but I agree. And your relationship with her in general, just, it says a lot, you know. That disconnected family that I had, in its own way, relates to the fact that you had your childhood that you went through. It's nowhere near the same. It's very different.
Yeah.
But it was still rough, and we still went through some shit. And to know that we're where we're at, and to see how that relationship with your Grandma Jane evolved and happened through life, it's another inspirational time for me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. One thing I love about you is when we're out and about, you're so good at connecting with people and seeing people as humans. And I think that's part of it, is being a little bit vulnerable and a lot honest, and just being who you are. And I think that's beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I enjoy it. As much as I'm an introvert, and as much as I don't like some people, I like people as a whole. I think we're an amazing species.
Yeah.
And so that little connection, I know it's cliche because it's from Fight Club, but that's a single serving friend. And while it's silly and it's trivial, it's fun. And it brings a little bit of extra joy for me.
I think those are the moments that make life worth living.
I agree.
Connecting with people.
I agree. And part of the depression side of it is that it's really hard to try to make those connections. Yeah. So while I was friendly, there was never anything pursued. I didn't have those really high quality friendships.
Yeah.
While I have had great friendships now, for a long time I didn't. Our friendship is of the highest quality. It's a great friendship.
Yeah.
I'm extremely grateful for it. You didn't just inspire me in like wanting to be a good teacher for you. You inspired me in that you were going through your journey as well, and you were open about it. And you, from the get-go, you weren't ashamed of the fact that you were depressed, of the fact that you had attempted suicide, that you had been through cutting and through these things. That was amazing to me, because I was always so ashamed of, the fact that I was molested as a kid, the fact that I had to deal with that predator, the fact that I didn't succeed in a lot of things throughout my life. I was very ashamed. And now there may be a touch of it here and there, because I still expect more from myself. I give myself the grace, and I realize that was life. That was life then, and I have the ability to have life different now.
Yeah.
While I still can't control when I lose somebody that I care about, I can control how I deal with it. And I can also choose to not as well, because I think that sometimes people do try to over control things. I let go. I let my hair down, and whether that's tears rolling down my face or belly laughter, I don't attach shame to any of those things now, because it's the human experience.
Yeah, I love that.
And I can 100% positively say that you helped inspire that a lot.
Well, thank you. Thanks very much.
I don't know anybody else that's interviewing their friends about the depressed times in their lives and the changes they've made, and doing it so unselfishly. There's not a single part of this that's for you.
As far as you know.
I know though. I know. It helps you. It has that bonus.
Yeah.
It is therapy for you too.
Yeah.
But I know it's for others.
Yeah. And I guess that's what I really appreciate about you and about our relationship, is we both have made a lot of the wrong choices. And we've come back to ourselves, back to our true selves, and have made the right choices for us.
Mm-hmm.
And led to such better things for us. Yeah. And we are testaments that you can do it.
Seriously, like it's fun to talk about the process. It's still hard for me to talk about the results sometimes because I still have high expectations of myself. I still have goals that I'm aiming for.
Yeah.
But I'm proud to say that I'm depressed, but I'm better than I ever have been. I have seasonal depression, but I handle it better than I ever have.
Yeah.
I have my own place. I have a good job. I am happy. I don't wonder about my next paycheck. I don't wonder about my next party. I'm in a good place.
Yeah.
But I'm so happy that I'm hungry for more too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so rad. I'm so proud of you, so happy for you. I'm so glad we're friends. Is there anything else you want to touch on?
I mean, we dug pretty deep. I know we brushed over many things that we could talk a lot more about.
Yeah.
I think we covered as much as we can at this time. My brain's getting tired. Talking about this stuff is, even in this situation, it's still tiring. Yeah. It's still draining.
Yeah.
So I think we're okay for now, but I think we can always dive into things deeper, more specifically later.
Yeah.
It's not like this is the
totally.
end.
Not the end. Okay, I do have to ask one last question.
All of them.
On Samara Builds, we're building better lives.
Yes.
How are you building a better life right now?
Consistency.
I like that.
It's funny because my little brother, bless his soul, I love him so much, has somehow, some way, always looked up to me.
Oh.
I am now getting to the point where I feel I deserve it.
That's cool.
Because I didn't for a very long time.
Yeah.
And that spreads to all of my family members. Hearing my parents are proud of me is big. But consistency was the key to all of that. All of it. That's what everybody says. I knew you had it in you. Just needed the consistency. And so that word in particular is what rings true to me every day. Just keep going. Just keep doing it. You're on a roll. Just be consistent and keep going in that good direction. Steps back are going to happen. But that's what consistency is keep going through that step back. So that's how I'm building it. Staying consistent. Who knows what's going to happen next? There's always something. There's always something. I'm going to have a better winter than I had last year and then I had the year before. And then I'm going to have another awesome summer. And I'm going to keep seeing more rewards and results. And life's going to keep getting better. I know it is because I'm going to put forth the effort.
Yeah. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of future you. I'm excited for you. You're awesome.
Thank you. You too. I love you too.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you guys for watching.
Thank you.